The first entry that mentions the flashes is dated the 6th of September, 1924. 2314 light arc on southern horizon, white-green. Duration 1 heartbeat. Apparent aftermiss showed lantern room as it will be several moments later. My cigarette already crushed out. Logbook placed open to the next page. Impossible. Elias Marrow closed the leather book after writing that line and paced the cramped lantern room, hearing the gears of the rotating Fresnel lens click and whir like a patient clock. Isolation had never bothered him in his 12 years as keeper of Gannett Rock Light, but the brief vision, no, the certainty of what had not yet happened unsettled him more than any storm. He checked his pocket watch. 11:14 again. The cigarette still burned between his fingers. The log still lay on the preceding page. He forced himself to extinguish the stub and flip the book. The future conformed to the note as meekly as a well-trained dog. The next night, 23:11, the flash returned. This time it lasted perhaps 2 whole seconds, long enough for Elias to watch himself half turn toward the stairway. Something unseen below evidently called his attention in that glimpse. He smelled salt and machine oil. Then the lantern room returned to normal. 3 minutes later, as the sweep of the lens painted the black Atlantic, the brass telephone at the base of the stairs rang with a faint electric burr, the assistant at the fog signal house reporting a malfunction. Elias half turned exactly as he had glimpsed himself doing. He did not sleep afterward. Instead, he examined the facts with the discipline the service expected of its keepers. A light on the horizon, one not recorded on any chart, appeared at roughly the same hour each night, shedding a radiance that carried a sliver of the immediate future. 2 seconds tonight. It might be dismissed as fatigue, but fatigue cannot foretell the ringing of a telephone. From that evening, he began a dedicated section of the log titled Anomalous Flashes, ruled into columns: date, time, duration, content, subsequent accuracy. Elias measured the length with a pocket chronometer, counting aloud, 1 and 2, until the vision snapped off. The initial intervals increased at an arithmetic crawl: 3 seconds on the 9th, 5 seconds on the 10th. Content grew correspondingly richer, gulls freezing mid-air before resuming flight, a coffee mug sliding along the desk he hadn't yet set it upon, rain hissing against glass before any cloud had formed. With each correct prediction, his skepticism eroded. By the 12th, dread replaced wonder. The flash that night stretched nearly 15 seconds and ended with a tableau of himself slumped in the high chair beside the lens, head cracked against iron railing, blood stippling the observation glass. A red knot blossomed at his temple like a carnation pinned by a careless god. He wrote no more for several minutes, watching his hand tremble. Then he forced words onto paper. Saw own apparent corpse. Injury cranial, causes unknown. Time stab. Vision. Clock read 0:03, later than current observation. When the minute hand finally reached midnight and then 0:03 unremarkably passed, he released a breath he had not realized he was holding. No fatal blow. No blood. The relief was thin. He reminded himself the earlier visions had never exceeded 60 seconds into the future. Tonight's premonition had been 45 minutes distant. Perhaps accuracy decayed with extension. The following dawn, he cabled the district inspector, requesting leave to visit the mainland for medical consultation, vision. He received a brisk denial. The tender would not arrive for a fortnight, and besides, a department physician would sooner attribute such ailments to whiskey than to genuine illness. Unspoken in the inspector's reply was the threat of dismissal. A keeper who abandoned station during the autumn storm season risked more lives than his own. Elias accepted the verdict with grim resignation, yet he refused to be an idle witness to his prophesied death. He studied the tower for hazards: loose railing screws, slick oil puddles, irregular steps. He replaced worn treads, sanded splinters, rearranged tools so none could topple from shelves. Each improvement dulled his anxiety, until the 16th of September shattered the illusion of control. At 22:57, the horizon erupted not in a pulse, but in a sustained blaze almost as bright as the lantern itself. For 30 full seconds Elias watched, aghast, as time seemed to peel forward like pages caught in a gale. He saw the lantern room near midnight, glass rattling under the battering of a typhoon. Saw himself descending the spiral stairs 3 steps at a time. Saw seawater burst through the lower door in a roaring sheet, slamming it inward. Felt, rather than heard, the tower groan as foundation stones shifted. And then, worse than water, he saw the wall calendar above his bunk, its pages riffling through September 20th, 21st, stopping on the 22nd. On that square someone, presumably himself, had scrawled in black grease pencil, "Mine," beneath the single word, Finn. When the vision ended, Elias found himself on his knees. Outside, the weather was calm, the sky crystalline, but storms bred fast along this coast, he knew. He recorded every detail. Durham 30 seconds, meteorological conditions indicated, structural damage predicted, date future events, and signed the entry with deliberate flourish, as though signing a will. He descended to his bunk room and began assembling a sea bag, extra lamp oil, spare bulbs, matches, 2 tins of corned beef, a coil of rope. If resignation meant court-martial later, so be it. He intended to signal the next fishing vessel that passed and abandon the rock. No vision had yet shown him aboard such a vessel, but perhaps he could outrun the prophecy. In the noon light of the 17th, he sighted the trawler Adelaide passing westward. He flashed the semaphore lamp "Need evacuation," yet received only a puzzled blink in response. He tried again. The mate answered, "Cannot approach shoals?" Elias cursed geography. Gannet Rock lay surrounded by ragged teeth of basalt. Only the lighthouse tender, with shallow draft, dared the narrow channel. The Adelaide steamed on. That night the flash extended nearly a minute. He almost fled downstairs to escape it, but the unnatural brilliance rooted him. The vision spared no horror. He saw the tower toppled, a rag of masonry dangling from twisted beams. Saw himself pinned beneath debris in the engine room. Saw seawater climbing inexorably to his chin while he gasped sour air smelling of gear oil and crushed stone. His pocket watch, never far from reach, floated from his vest. The second hand ticked, then stopped at 2:38. When reality returned, Elias vomited into a bucket. He rinsed his mouth with kerosene-tainted water, the only supply on hand, and tasted metal the rest of the night. He tried science. He aimed the service telescope at the source of the anomalous light. No vessel, no celestial body, just blank horizon. He fitted the brass shutter from an old camera across the lantern, hoping the flash would reflect and blind itself, but light passed through as through glass. He persuaded his assistant, young Finlay Porter, stationed 200 yards away at the fog house, to spend the evening in cribbage, determined not to be alone. At 23 o'clock the horizon burned, yet Porter saw nothing extraordinary. Elias's shout made the boy flinch, cards tumbling, but Porter insisted the room looked unchanged. Whatever phenomena manifested, it addressed itself only to Elias. On the 19th, the flash began at dusk and did not cease for over 3 minutes. Time unfolded like a map. Elias saw the 21st, a barometer needle plunging, saw waves veined with phosphorescence batter rails, saw Finlay running the siren while he, Elias, lashed shutters over the lantern panes. Then the 22nd, hurricane. Buildings ripped from foundation, water whitening with spray. In the midst of that chaos, 22:38 minutes past 2:38, the towers split at its base. Darkness swallowed the optic light. A hush unbearable as childhood punishment followed. He watched himself stagger through rubble toward a shaft of moon, blood dripping over one eye. His legs failed at stair number 18. Too many broken rungs. He could not breathe for the dust and brine. He heard the sea, colossal, jubilant, then no more. After the flash ended, Elias ripped the calendar page from the wall, clutching the square labeled "Mine/Finn," and fed it to the stove. Paper curled, blackened, vanished. Yet dread remained as though the word still hovered in the air. Finlay, alarmed by the sound of tearing, climbed the connecting walkway. Elias seized him by the shoulders. "When the storm comes, you will leave," he ordered. "Row to open water. Use the spare skiff. Do not look back," the youth protested. "Regulations, duty, mutual assistance." Elias thrust $3 gold into his palm, wages owed, and repeated the instruction until Finlay nodded. pale. "I'm setting kegs of oil and rations in the boat tomorrow," Elias said. "Be ready." September 20th dawned under lowering cloud. Gulls wheeled silent, a sign fish had dived deep against barometric fall. Elias and Finlay bounded between stores and slip, securing crates. By dusk, wind moaned like a siren across gallery rails. At 22 o'clock, rain lashed horizontally, lantern windows blurting with water. Finlay waited by the boathouse. Elias climbed to the lantern room, intent on one last sweeping of the arc lamps. At 22:13 the flash came, longer than any before, and encompassed not minutes but hours, pouring the near future into his eyes with merciless clarity. He saw Finlay launch into mountainous swell at 23:40, the dinghy climbing a cliff of green, then disappearing. He saw himself alone, writing furious lines into the anomalous log now spattered with rain. And then the sequence diverged from previous nights, offering an alternate thread. Instead of descending to the engine room during the tower's collapse, he saw himself dragging the reserve acetylene cylinders outside onto the rocky bluff, arranging them like sentinels, each cylinder's valve cracked. Wind screamed, carrying vapor. He watched himself strike a flare, toss it into the fuming cloud. An explosion like dawn erupted outward, a barricade of fire between lighthouse and sea. Surging water recoiled, momentarily tamed. Debris rained into foam, but the tower's base held, spared the fatal blow that would have toppled it. The vision ended with Elias, soaked but upright, staring at a structure still whole. Come 2:38, the pocket watch in his hand ticked past the dreaded second. Survival. Hope, hot and reckless, blazed within him. The flash had revealed choice, not destiny. The future could be forged. He set to work. With sleet stinging his cheeks, he manhandled cylinder after cylinder, 6 in total, onto the lee side of the promontory. Finlay spotted him and hurried over, but Elias waved him back toward the boat. "You must go," he shouted. "I stay to keep the light." At 23:35, Elias helped shove the dinghy. "Aim south till you clear the shoals," he commanded. Finlay's lantern bobbed once, twice, then vanished into sheets of rain. Midnight. Inside the tower, gusts hammered every joint. Elias watched flecks of stone fall from the ceiling. Springs on the lens carriage squealed. He descended to fetch flares and matches, teeth chattering though sweat soaked his shirt. At 1:55, he muscled the last cylinder onto its side, valves pointing seaward. Wind keened through broken railings like pipe organ notes. He opened each spindle, smelling the sweet acetylene hiss. Vapor sheets drifted east, merging with flying spray. Lightning spiderwebbed the clouds, illuminating serpents of mist. 2:30, the tower behind him shuddered as a rogue wave struck. He braced against rubble, fumbling for the storm match safe. The pocket watch showed 2:31 7 minutes. He struck a match. Wind killed it instantly. Again? Dead. He cursed, shielding flame with both palms, body crouched. 2:33, third match, lit, a tiny star in cosmic darkness. He cupped it to the flare's cap, sulfur biting. The flare sputtered, then roared scarlet. The watch, 2:35. He cast the flare into the drifting cloud. For one eternal breath, nothing happened. Then a belly-deep concussion. Daylight blasted across the bluff. Fire column rose 100 feet, painting the tower red and gold. The tidal surge rushing toward the rock met a wall of expanding gas and heat. Whitewater halted, collapsed back into itself, buying seconds. Debris pelted the gallery, but the masonry held. Elias laughed, a crazed bark torn away by wind. Steam gusted around him, warm and metallic. 2:37. He picked himself up, staggered inside, up the stair. Rubble littered the steps, but the foundation felt firm. 2:38 came and passed, marked only by the ticking of gears and the roaring of distant surf. The lighthouse stood. The vision had been wrong, or rather, Elias had wrenched events onto a new rail. He slumped beside the lantern, heart booming louder than the storm siren. Rain hammered glass, But beneath its smear, the lamp still cut clean circles through the dark, guiding ships he would never see. When dawn arrived, slate gray, the sea lay strewn with kelp and timber, but calmed, spent. Columns of smoke drifted where the explosion had scorched rock. Elias scanned the horizon for Finley's dinghy. At first only gulls dotted the pallid water, then far off a speck of white sail, improvised from canvas tarp, crept into view. Elias's knees gave way in relief. He descended to the signal lamp, flashing, "All well here." A pause, then the dinghy's lamp winked acknowledgement. The future he had seen, the one that promised suffocation beneath stone, had been dismissed like a bad tenant. Later, when the tender finally braved the seas on the 26th, inspectors found the tower scarred but functional, its keeper thinner, older, but alive. He surrendered the anomalous log without protest. The district superintendent leafed through its pages, frowning at the detailed predictions, the feverish handwriting, the simple concluding sentence, "Light showed futures. Futures can be burned to ash." The superintendent closed the book. Regulations required he test Elias for exhaustion, perhaps recommend reassignment. Yet he glanced at the intact lantern, the steady beam, and instead clasped the keeper's shoulder. "Good work, Marrow," he said. "Storm like that could have wiped the charts." That night, Elias climbed alone to the lantern and tended the flame. The sea spread black and innocent beneath him. Midnight came and went. No green-white flash appeared on any horizon. Only the slow pulse of his own beacon, answering itself across the waves. He continued to watch, not with dread now, but with curiosity, wondering what shape a future undisclosed might take, and whether, when it arrived, he would recognize it by anything other than the beating of his heart.